Hello everyone, we are here to introduce you some characters who live in Francisco region. The one is Francisco Franco and the other one is an antique Franquist.
Good afternoon, Franco and Anna. Do you mind to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. As Jimena, the interviewer, said, I'm the ruler of Spain. I was born the 4th of December in 1892 in Ferrol, España. I was the second son of my fathers with the last name Franco Bahamonde. Throughout my life, I was forming on the idea that Spain was sick and offended and that nothing could be better than learning how to defend it. I entered in a naval school, but for lack of boats later, the school was closed. In April 1913, I applied and got admission to regular Melilla Indigenous Forces, and in 1914 the First World War exploded. After 3 years in 1915, I reached by war merits my third star. I was 22 years old and was the youngest captain of the army. And with only 23 years, I was also the youngest commander of the Army of Spain. In February 1925, for merit in the campaign, I was promoted to colonel. I was 13 years old and I was the youngest in the position. On January 29, 1930, after having given 6 years of moral recovery and material to Spain, falls the dictatorship of Primo de Rivera, which is replaced by the government General Berenguer Bridge. After a bloody civil war internally and to the need for a single nation area commander, we met the General Cabanellas, Mola, Quindelan, Cueipo de Llano, Orgaz, Gil Juste, Davila, and Saliquet, and I am elected Generalissimo of the armies and head of the new state. On October 11, 1936, to my 43 years of age, I took possession in Burgos of the supreme command of the nation, same that lasted until the year of 1975, date in which I died.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana and I was born in Madrid, Spain in 1931. The terrible wars started in 1936, when I was 5 years old and I lived through all the regime of Franco. The war ended in 1974, and by the time Franco died, I was 44 years old. Throughout the war, I lived in terrible conditions, under oppression by the military and by the government, because of the excessive power they had over us. I couldn't live in my own house because of the bombing that this traitor caused. We would have to live underground, and all the supplies we had right to were disgraceful.
How is your social, political, and economic environment?
Well, the national scene was somber. Between 1810 and 1823, an extension of 300,000 square miles and about 12 million people was lost in America. In August 1917, the period of strikes and unrest culminating in the outbreak of a revolutionary general strike in all Spain. The government mobilized the army, and I had to appease the more difficult focus, the mining basins of Asturias. A few months later, the First World War ends with the defeat of German Empire and allies. Spanish political decomposition requires that on September 13, 1923, and Spain lived 6 years of internal peace and economic revival. Left-wing and Republican parties mobilized hopeful, before which saw its chance. Elections are called for February 16, 1936, without waiting for final scrutiny begins. Uncontainable for Republican misrule, the red overflow that puts into practice the slogan of Moscow with the creation in Spain of a popular front. With Dabo returns to power, Manuel Azaña dismisses. I had the headquarters of the state more central and looked for a new confinement and sent it to the Canary Islands.
The social environment I lived in was based on oppression. The military didn't have any limits on us. If they wanted, they would have ordered our deaths or take us to prison. The political one was based in a political army named National Syndicalist, under the orders of the same party and the army. The economical environment was through rationing. We could write to what was called cartilla, that was every 15 days, and with it we would buy food like meat, if there was any, bread, and oil or sunflower oil, even though we were the country that produced more olive oil than any other. And besides, the salary was really low.
Is there any conflict in your environment?
Yes, many conflicts throughout my military career they had in Spain. Morocco was the first problem bigger that there was at the beginning of my military career and with which I faced, and then the period of strikes and unrest that culminated with the bursting of a revolutionary general strike. Also, the First World War and the Spanish Civil War and the Second World War, when I was head of the Spanish state and supreme commander of the armies.
The main one was when the Moroccan troops were led by Franco to invade the peninsula of Spain to kill Spanish citizens no matter their political ideals. These troops went out from Morocco and started bombing Spain, killing millions of citizens, which was the reason we would have to live underground.
Were you affected by the conflict or did it benefit you?
In all the conflicts involved with determination and courage, and somehow I was benefited more than affected. But always it was thanks to my merits of war, and of course I was affected by the love of Spain. Hurt my country, but love profited by my personal merits and value in the art of war. So I was always climbing in every war in military grades participation. Only earns respect from the troops for courage, and thus I win it.
The conflict only benefited the military. It caused the schools to close because of the bombing and for us to be underground for undetermined time with few supplies to live. They protected only certain low-class groups by putting them in military schools. The benefit of winning the war would be to keep surviving with the income of the military schools.
Could you have avoided being in that current situation?
No, never. I delivered to my country and weapons. I am a military career with military training and was always looking for improvement in Spain.
I couldn't have avoided it because I was persecuted by the military for any reason they could come up with. And besides, I was oppressed by them, which wouldn't let me go out of my basement because I would have been killed if I even tried to think about going out and stop the conflict.
What is your role in your environment?
Always participatory. Always acting on behalf of my country. As I have said, after a military career in the War of Africa, was one of the generals who rose up against the government of the Republic on 18 July 1936. I was appointed Generalissimo for the other general rebels. I was appointed the 1st October 1936 head of the Spanish state, a position that I had until my death. Victory in the Spanish Civil War that went from the years 1936 to 1939 was due largely to the effective and sustained support he received from Hitler and Mussolini. At the outbreak of the World War in September 1939, Spain is declared neutral. It is important to remember that we had just the Civil War and consider that it was not strategically smart, which is enemistara the government and Spanish people with London and Washington.
My role was pretty small. When I grew up and was old enough, or when I was 18 years old, I was completely democratic and against the Social Party. So I couldn't do anything because I was persecuted by Franco because of being against him and his ideals.
Is it good or bad?
Well, I think it is good. Although there will probably be some or many that say that it was bad because surely the measures taken were favorable.
It was bad because I didn't have any kind of freedom and all I could do was run from the military and hope to not be being killed.
Why?
As an example, I directed the world with conservative, for removed from the fast war criteria advocating modern strategic doctrines. After the Civil War, I had in Spain a regime backstamp, but I never promised to Spain in World War II as just sent volunteer troops to fight alongside the Germans against the Soviet Union, the so-called Blue Division. I always saw the welfare of Spain.
If bad, could you have done anything to change it?
I insist. I consider that it was not bad, but already the story I judged and already I cannot do anything to change it.
I couldn't do anything about it because if I had done anything against them, I wouldn't have any other option than, as I said before, being killed.
Why didn't you do something to correct the conflict that
The United States and the Holy See signed cooperation agreements with Netherlands, giving me the international legitimacy that we needed. Later was the incorporation of Spain to the United Nations and the first economic stabilization plan, agreed upon with the International Monetary Fund.
I wasn't able to do something to correct it because if I even thought or did anything to try to change anything of the government or being against it, I would have been directly taken to prison or the cemetery to be killed.
Was there any possibility to change the current environment?
As I have always mentioned, I worked for the good of Spain and my people. I never kept me on the sidelines.
As I already said several times, I wasn't allowed to do anything about it because of the pressure and the overpower they had over us.
Is there anything that you could have done to avoid the conflict?
Perhaps the deaths of people at the hands of the Nazis, but where they are the Spanish people.
No comments.
Was there peace and order?
He complied despite many.
There wasn't any kind of peace. I couldn't even live in my own house, and everyone was in panic. However, we couldn't make a change.
Were human rights respected?
Always.
Never.
Was there any law in your favor that could protect you or in the contrary affect you?
Our law were the fundamental laws of the law. A set of 8 laws organizing the powers of the state during my term of office.
There was no law that could protect us. Only if someone was part of the Franco's ideals, they would have been protected. But we had to protect ourselves from this traitor to the nation and worldwide.